This is Hips News, and welcome to 2022. Yes, we are back, a new year, and a new episode. But first,
remember, all I'm offering is the truth.
And on the cool check-in, center stage on the mic. How y'all feel out there?
Introducing
Get down.
the world famous
I said hit the news.
Let's go! Let me introduce you to the one. Let me introduce you to the
Truth in the place to be, as it is plain to see.
Now,
Hidden in plain sight.
And mind your business.
Watch out.
New World Order.
I'm not gonna take this anymore!
You know what I'm saying?
So what you saying?
Check this out.
good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Happy New Year, and welcome back to our first show of the year of 2022, dealing with a subject matter that very well be just around the corner. We will hear from Brother Sadiki and his thoughts as he breaks down the metaverse and the technical breakdown of words describing what is the meta matrix. I'm Vessel 1, and with me is Vessel 2. Vessel 2, Happy New Year, and how are you?
Happy New Year, Vessel One. I am doing fabulous. This is going to be the year where all is good, no matter how it comes. That's how I'm looking at it. How about yourself?
I agree, my brother, I agree. And with that, we're going to jump right into it. We got this audio from Brother Sadiki, and he's going to break down the meta matrix. But first, I do have a small clip of what is 5G. So we'll look at that first.
Urgent wake-up call. 5G means danger for life and physical condition.
The establishment media are highly euphoric in their reporting on the new generation of mobile radio communications, 5G. Germany is said to be underdeveloped concerning seamless mobile phone coverage. As an important business nation, it would need seamless network coverage. Dead spots are no longer allowed to exist. 5G is said to now allow autonomous driving and inform us automatically when the milk bottle is empty. So it would be existentially necessary for our future. Today we broadcast an urgent wake-up call. These are the major dangers of 5G.
Whoever believes that the step up from 4G to 5G is just a next step, comparable with the step up from 3G to 4G, succumbs to a huge error. Because 5G means a gigantic quantum leap, and is the most serious intervention mankind has ever made in nature in the entire history of humanity. In order to install a nationwide 5G network in Germany, about 800,000 new transmitters are needed. 5G means such a massive infrastructure upgrade as has never been seen before. For 5G in urban areas, the providers have to install a strongly radiating mobile communications antenna approximately every 100 meters. What an ocean of antennas! What a radiation tsunami! For 5G to have sufficient penetration depth, despite the shortwave radiation, it takes up to a 1,000-fold increase in transmission power. So 5G has a twofold consequence. First, microwave antennas present everywhere. Second, dramatic increase in the radiation intensity. This exponential increase of forced irradiation of the entire population is an irresponsible experiment on human health. Already in 2011, the World Health Organization classified mobile communications in Category 2B of cancer-causing substances, thus as potentially carcinogenic. Based on recent scientific studies, reputable scientists are demanding its classification in Category 1, namely as cancer-causing. Just how dangerous 5G technology can be became apparent at the end of October 2018 in The Hague, Holland. During a 5G test, at least 298 healthy birds fell dead from the sky. Eyewitnesses also reported that ducks behaved strangely, constantly trying to hold their heads below the water. About 1 week after the first bird die-off in Regent Park in The Hague, more than 100 starlings fell dead from the trees, while another 5G test was being carried out. First conclusion, 5G represents a considerable hazard for the physical integrity of humans and animals. Second, 5G is a threat to our lives and our freedom. Through this worldwide microwave antenna jungle and RFID microchips, which are supposed to be implemented into everything, it will be possible for everything to be networked with everything, and everything to communicate with one another. In other words, the Internet of Things. Tom Wheeler, ex-president of the Federal Communications Commission, or FCC, gets right to the point. Hundreds of billions of microchips attached to products from pill bottles to lawn sprinklers. We must forget the idea that the 5G future will only be for urban regions. The 5G revolution will affect every corner of our country. What can be connected will be connected. Likewise, also the PC, microphone, and computer camera are supposed to be connected, and through this a total surveillance system has gained access to our houses. The 5G network can see through walls and houses, leading to digital control of every person. This surveillance concerns not only one's own home, but 5G will also allow a full surveillance of the entire landscape, because 5G has mobile networking capabilities. Every moving point can be observed and tracked. Our homes are meant to become smart homes, and cities smart cities. Everything is digitally networked by means of microwaves. And like this, we are caught in a net of microwaves which paralyze us spiritually, mentally, and physically. In the course of this digitalization madness, money too has become digitalized. This means that citizens are to be convinced with threadbare arguments that cash is outdated. When everything is digitalized and the Internet of Things is networked with the real world, then complete control over every single person will be possible. Second conclusion, 5G paves the way for a surveillance dictatorship of such an extent that not even George Orwell could have anticipated it.
Dear viewers, since the mass media have concealed these counter voices from the people so far, this program is not only a wake-up call, but also an appeal. Already in the spring of 2019, the frequencies are set to be sold by auction via the Federal Network Agency. The goal is that by the end of 2022, 98% of households are to be connected to the 5G network. Therefore, please support our wake-up call by forwarding this program now by means of the inserted link to as many of your friends and contacts as possible. Inform yourself about 5G technology in our 5G series. This is how you can take action to help wake up the people around you and encourage the buildup of a substantial counter-movement.
Today, we're going to talk about the metaverse. I want to share what we imagine is possible.
As far as an infrastructure, all right? So 5G is happening as we speak. We'll see 6G approaching 2030. We'll see 7G. I'm talking about as an infrastructure. We'll see 7G probably approaching, 2035. Going into 2040, we'll see 8G around 2040 going into 2045. Now, 2045 is the year that most scientists and researchers who think that the singularity will occur, they predicted that will happen around 2045. Singularity, that means when artificial intelligence is predicted to supersede human intelligence.
hold on that thought right there. Will that mean artificial intelligence? Will these objects have feelings, emotions?
Well, no. They think so, though. But no. That won't happen. That's a sentient thing. You have to have souls and spirits to feel and, things of that nature. And these machines are not going to have that capacity to be able to do those things. Now, will they attempt to mimic it? That's a different conversation. To mimic it, all right? But to actually have it, that will not happen. But this is why we have to be we really have to pay attention to what's being said, because oftentimes it's in the wordage, and oftentimes we're not familiar with the wordage to understand the wordage to begin with. All right. So this is why I talk about these different terms and terms that we need to know, just so we can have an idea of what they're talking about. Transhumanism, posthumanism, the singularity, bionic age, nano age, robotics, homo evolutus, cybernetics, human plus, H plus, biotechnology, high-tech interface, bioenhancement, brain gate, nanotechnology, homo superior, right? Transcendence man, cyber consciousness, synthetic alchemy, digital alchemy, and there's tons of other terms. But we have to be familiar with these terms. What happens is, and I said this, over 10 years ago, that in 10 years, you start seeing many other scholars now all of a sudden dealing with transhumanism, artificial intelligence, nanotechnology, because it's going to be the thing to talk about. Like at one point, African history, everybody was talking about African history. Then it moves on to something else. Then it moves on to something else. So now we're in that time where technology.
Any thoughts? First clip, Brother Sadiki breaking it down. As far as from what I heard, he's focusing on the wordplay, terminology, the hijacking of the definitions and the meanings of what they're saying to us. And I believe he also said that for the most part, we have a very small understanding of what these words actually mean. Any thoughts? What you thinking?
Yes, Vessel 2. Brother Sadiki, he is laying out the groundwork and the foundation of understanding these words and terminology that's very important. Again, like you always say, Vessel 2, you have to look for the hijack, and usually you can find the hijack in the double talk or the forked tongue of the elites and how they come about or how they're trying to get people to fall under their spells or their witchcraft, their devilish ways. Like always, it's said that for any evil being to follow through with their plan, they first must let you know their plan. Not necessarily directly. Sometimes it's hidden in plain sight, or sometimes it's coded, or like we always say, hijacked in double talk. But yes, like anything, we must be vigilant and we must stay aware of what's going on around us. And again, this vocabulary is very important to have that awareness, at least, of what is the plan at hand. So yeah, very good clip to actually to get things started. Any further thoughts, Vessel 2?
In the clip itself, he was going over technology, and as far as the terminology and technology, which he stated we don't have understanding of, but as far as the technology itself, Is it alarming? Do you feel that technology has gone too far over the edge, where it's too far and too late to have any recalling of what we've already done, I guess, as far as transhuman is concerned? Do you see it even further human and computer merging? How do you see it? What are your thoughts on technology and transhuman, and as far as the direction of where we're going, Vessel One?
Well, good question, Vessel Two. Like anything, this technology or these sense of tools that they're implementing and putting in place, like anything, by itself it's harmless, but just like a gun or just like or any tool, it's whomever is in control of it, or what are their initial plans to use this technology will be. If it's for if it's to help, then by all means it could be beneficial, and it could be something that can be very useful in a positive sense. But as you know, that a lot of times, well, speaking of his story, and that there's a lot of diabolical and malicious means behind this. And unfortunately, this is at the cusp of becoming a reality, especially in 2022. They are really pushing for this metaverse and this technology to actually become a everyday household lifestyle tool to be used. It's not in experimental mode, or it's not anything hypothetical science fiction. This is all science fact, and it's happening right in front of our eyes. So again, to answer your question, how do I feel about this this technology? I really am very concerned about what it will be used for, in a nutshell. But again, at Hips News, we always try to bring this knowledge and these subject matters to the forefront, so our listeners, family, the community, and anyone who's in earshot can get a taste of what's to come, and that's been hidden in plain sight. And I digress. So I guess we'll move on to the next clip. Now we can see what Brother Sadiki will continue to enlighten us.
Yeah, Facebook is called Meta. But I mean, that's just the tip of the iceberg. And I just want people to be clear and do their best to follow what we'll be talking about, because we'll be talking about these things on some different levels, because there are some levels here that we have to deal with, whether we're dealing with third dimensional consciousness, fourth dimensional consciousness, fifth dimensional consciousness, which is more energy oriented, vibration and frequency oriented. But at the same time, I want people to be clear that those things become third dimensional because you're dealing with a place. You're manifesting these different dimensions. All right. And I want people to understand that. So we can get so metaphysical and get so much into this quantum world that we forget that we are in a physical body. And the third dimension is a physical, actual place. So you're dealing with things on a physical level. So you can be fifth dimensional consciousness and you still here in this third dimension dealing with third dimensional monotony. So I want people to understand that. All right. So let's be clear about it. And let's not get so deep that in essence we're shallow. That's what I want people to understand. All right. So metaverse. Before we get to metaverse, let me just lay some terms out, some terms here, because in dealing with artificial intelligence, it's just tons of terms that you'll hear and you'll deal with, and it's important that you're familiar with these terms, or what's being said will be over your head or something that you're just not familiar with. All right. So obviously, artificial intelligence, organic intelligence, inorganic intelligence, synthetic intelligence, transhumanism, posthumanism, the singularity, virtual reality, mixed reality, augmented reality, virtual environment, cybernetics, nanotechnology, nanobots, digital alchemy, synthetic alchemy, cyber consciousness. All of these are terms that you may hear. Robotics, nano age, smart technology, sex bots, things of that nature. All right. So just really keep your ears open and understand that what's happening from a standpoint of technology is mirroring and is the other side of what's happening from a standpoint of spiritual technology. So you got spiritual technology and you have AI. All right. AI does not exist without the spiritual technology. You are the spiritual technology. You are the archetype. You are organic. All right. Artificial intelligence is inorganic. It is going to emulate you, period. That's what's happening. It's emulating you. So it's mimicking you. You are the archetypal organic intelligence. You are not limited. When you deal with AI, AI is limited and it will always be limited. Don't get caught up in the manipulation of what media is reporting, Western scientists, and so on and so forth. Be very clear. It is limited. All right? You are not. And we need to understand that. You are limited, though, if you're in particular constructs that keep you limited, like religion and things of that nature. All right? Politics, education, so on and so forth. So those things are what keep you limited. Fear, trauma. Those constructs keep you limited as opposed to being the divine being that you are. Metaverse. Let's go to the metaverse. First of all, the metaverse is not new. Let me make that clear. Everyone is a metaverse expert now, right? But the bottom line is this. The metaverse is not new. What was before the metaverse? You can't have metaverse without virtual reality. You can't have a meta landscape or a meta infrastructure without virtual reality already existing, all right? What was before virtual reality? Your imagination, the cosmos, nature. See, all of these things are organic and archetypal. They predate virtual reality and metaverses that are inorganic and artificial. All right. Now, the purpose is to tap into you. You are the mainframe. That's the purpose. You are the imagination. I always say imagination is quote unquote God. I use that term loosely. The imagination is quote unquote God. Let's be clear. Why? Because the imagination is a force. The imagination is the source. It's connected to the source. It creates and manifests from the source. And we have to be clear about that. So the purpose of virtual reality is to tap into your imagination so you are not tapping into your imagination. Now, if the imagination is quote unquote God, and if you are not able to tap into quote unquote God, then what are you tapping into? And what is virtual reality attempting to tap into? So this is when we start talking about cyber consciousness. All of these things that is attempted to be created in order to mimic you. This is when you start talking about attempting to create quote unquote God artificially. This is when you start talking about attempting to create, or I should say make, consciousness artificially. to make a soul artificially, which these things you can't do. All right. But again, when you start dealing with the manipulation of the media and scientists and researchers and, things of that nature, people who are not studied, won't understand the games that are being played. They've never really known what a soul is. They've never really known what consciousness is. They've never really known what the imagination is because they can't tap into it. Not at the level that some are able to tap into it. All right. So I want to make all of that clear. So when we start talking about a metaverse and all these different things, the purpose is to infuse you in it. Let me give you a quote directly from Mark Zuckerberg himself in regards to the metaverse. He describes it as the conception of the metaverse as an internet that you're inside of rather than just looking at. I'm going to read it again. Conception of the metaverse as an internet that you are inside of rather than just looking at. Okay. So now we're talking about transhumanism. Transhumanism is the merging of man and machine. All right. So, first of all, everyone is a transhumanist on some level because you have a phone, you're on the internet, you have a computer, or whatever the situation may be. That's lower tier, of course. But the fact that you're interfacing with these technologies is low tier transhumanism. But then there's higher tier. So when you start talking about being immersed into a technology, that's a whole different level of transhumanism. All right. Now, when we talk about virtual reality, it gets really deep because I don't think people understand the effects of virtual reality and headsets and things of that nature, and how that can affect the brain, how that can affect neurological synapses and things of that nature, how it affects a person emotionally, hormonally, socially, all of these different things as part of that process. I want to mention this too. As far as the metaverse, I know a lot of people are getting entrapped by this notion of economic freedom and money and Bitcoin and all these things that can be part of that process, cryptocurrency, whatever type of coins, dealing with the blockchain and all of those different things, and that's fine. But, at the end of the day, people have to look at this from a whole perspective and really understand what's going on. So when we look at the metaverse, I want to remind people of something. Do people remember Prism? So we're going back a decade. Now, the purpose for Prism was counterintelligence, right? Surveillance and things of that nature that was created by NSA, right? So, but there were companies that participated, right? These are the same companies that's dealing with metaverse, Microsoft, Facebook, Google, right? And then there's other companies. But these are the main companies. And I'm referring to them for a reason, because when you deal with metaverse, these are going to be the main companies that's going to have some type of a meta landscape or some type of a meta infrastructure, whatever name they end up calling it. But they'll all have the same type of landscapes, all right, from a meta standpoint. And that's important for us to understand. Now, if that was the purpose of Prism, how do people think this won't be the purpose as well of the metaverse? This goes into what I've always talked about, what Facebook was and is to begin with, or Meta was or is to begin with, and the purpose of Facebook from a standpoint of dealing with data. You are the data, right? So it's about real world data for AI. That's what it's about, your data. So AI can attempt to mimic and manipulate your data. It is learning from your data. This is what we fail to understand. So meta information, metadata. That's what Prism was about. Meta information and metadata. Meta information is you. You're the meta information. Your emails, text messages, voice messages, whatever form of communication that is able to be stored and recorded, right? So this is why you've had Skynet in the past, you know, and so now you have cloud and all these things that people don't really understand the reasons that these things exist, all right? So that's your meta information. Then there's the metadata. The metadata is what and how that meta information is stored. That's what metadata is. That's what's happening. So we won't see anything any different from a standpoint of dealing with the metaverse. And this is why I was saying you got to understand what preceded it.
He was breaking down that clip.
Exactly. A little lengthy, but I believe that it's necessary for the people out there listening to get a real feel of what this meta matrix is all about. Just something off the top of my head that you know, we can probably discuss or elaborate on a later date. But these questions were dealing with the meta universe or meta matrix. Okay, living in the meta matrix or meta universe. Question number 1: how do you eat or be nourished? That's number 1. Number 2: you need to walk around. So how is that going to happen if you're plugged in, you're sitting down and just walking? So that's another question at hand. Number 3, as we know, the meta matrix or the meta universe is a digital abstract world or a fake world. It is not reality. So the question is, of this fake world, what is the appeal? Number 4, what do you do when you get tired of the meta matrix or the metaverse? Are you able to unplug from it, or are you stuck there permanently? And last but not least, number 5, most humans they're very curious, or they like to expand or evolve after a while. So my thoughts are, is this, or will this be a permanent thing that they're trying to get people to stay? And if so, will you be able to evolve? Will you will it become mundane, boring? You know, it has to have some type of interest. It can't just be about making crypto coins and building your fake reality, your fake house. It has to be a point where, or at least somewhat a grounded state of reality. I mean, you're just gonna basically transfer, and that's where you're gonna stay. And I don't believe that the metaverse is that appealing for majority of the people to stay there 24/7, 7 days a week, 365 days a year or more. After a while, I think people are going to get kind of burnt out. That's my opinion. But, and if so, like I said, can you unplug from it? So, any thoughts, Special Two?
I would like to recommend Black Mirror, the TV series. I believe you can find some of those glimpses of how things might look in the metaverse in those series. Yeah, I'm not sure if the ultimate goal is to have us zombies where we're just trapped. You know, the godfather of, you know, that world is the Matrix. So he wasn't trapped necessarily in that world. He chose to stay in that world, but he wasn't trapped. It's just if he died in that world, then that was all she wrote, right?
Right.
So
Right.
I don't know, the agenda, but if you just look at, well, I would say you're definitely not a gamer. I can tell you don't spend hours upon hours complacent playing video games, but those who are out there that play video games, they're already there. Only thing's missing is the plug-in outlet for them to be there, in that particular world. But as far as being lost in a game, playing it for hours, and you not having real, social life outside of game playing, it's already at that point where this past Olympics, they was supposed to be e-gaming in the Olympics.
Right.
So yeah, it's not a big push. Like I keep saying, it's all generational. The younger generation, it's all about advertisement, is all about geared to capturing them. And the metaverse, depending on how they set it up, it could be, like you said, suggesting a place where you never can come back from. But if you think about it, the internet is kind of like that as it is now, because you have a lot of people who are playing games online, making money, and that's the only source of income. So yeah, it's a sticky situation, and I don't know what would be so different between the meta world and what's already here. I would hate to be trapped there, but we're trapped here. So, it's all about your comfort of happiness and where you find your comfortness at, I guess. Because think about it, we're in one of the safest countries in the world, but the suicide rate is bananas, right? So to us, I would say that there's something wrong. We don't come from a necessarily safe country, but living in a safe country, you would think that everything would be happy, peaceful, and flowers blooming, correct?
Yeah, you would assume, yeah.
But no, we live it every day. That's not the case.
That's
That's
true. That's true.
So
that is true.
And think about it. We are in the home of video games. The home.
Yeah.
Donkey Kong was originated where?
Over in Japan.
Right.
That's a Nintendo system game.
Pac-Man, all of that. So yeah, man.
Yes.
This is it's here. It's just whether you choose not to at this point entertain it. And as Sensei Sadiki said, that world doesn't exist until you input your information into it. So everybody has their vice. I just, hopefully those who are venturing off into that world, I hope it does you good instead of
the series Black Mirror. Yes, and I believe that people should view that series to get an idea of more about the metaverse or so. But to the point where you get into the matrix of it all, and if you die in the matrix, then that's all she wrote. But who's not to say that could be another somewhat genocidal agenda to get enough people and to wipe them clean or wipe them out. And again, another aspect of things, if we're talking about health, humans, as are connected who are mammals, that it's in their nature to exercise, to get out, to move around. Um, Being in this metaverse, I don't see much exercise happening, much mobility. It's Westworld. That's it's not necessarily simulation, but there are simulated events and things that happen in a somewhat a robotic AI computer world, and that you can live in a different type of reality or state.
I would say
But
the sex brothels in Europe look like that.
right, exactly. But again, as you can see, even in that, when man mixed with machine or transhuman aspect comes about, there will be problems. These are the questions that has to be answered, or that will come up. So yeah, it's a deep concept of a reality that's on the verge of becoming real as we speak. Anything else to add, Vessel 2?
Looking forward to listening to this last clip so I can see how Sensei Sadiki wraps everything up for us.
Okay, let's do it.
Yeah, just so I can give a clear definition of metaverse. The metaverse is the virtual world where headsets will allow people to immerse themselves into a matrix-like world. All right, so basically we're talking about the third generation internet or Web 3.0. So that's what we're talking about, exponentially how technology has grown. Now, let me make this clear. This is all old technology. It's all old. What is called the metaverse is old. What is called virtual reality is old. 5G is old. All of these technologies are old. But 5G will be the infrastructure in order to now bring what is called the metaverse into fruition. Now, it really will be 6G when this notion of a metaverse really jumps off, all right? And 6G we won't see probably for another 5 to 10 years or so, all right? Just so everyone is clear. But 5G is the infrastructure. Now, what 5G is going to do is 5G makes it easier from a standpoint of the virtual side of it and how one's identity will look, all right? So we're talking about holographic type of technology and things of that nature, XR technology, which is immersive extended reality. All right, so that's what we're talking about, digital replicas or digital twins and things of that nature, moving, into 6G and being able to be in hundreds of places at one time, so to speak, based on this holographic type of technology or digital replica type of technology. So it's a lot that's going to be happening that people don't understand is going to be happening. And just as a side note, in me mentioning 5G, and a lot of people you may not get this, and it's okay. I'm just going to plant a seed. When we deal with 5G, first and foremost, what was used in order for 5G to come through the back door is what people call COVID. All right, overt 19. That's what it was for. You go back to 9/11. 9/11 was to bring in the back door all of the homegrown terrorism bills and things of that nature. That was the purpose of 9/11, to create laws and things of that nature for so-called terrorism, and people wouldn't question it because people would think that they needed the government to protect them. All right. So here now we have overt 19, or what people call COVID. This is no different. That was the front to bring in this 5G technology. So what did they do? They set up the 5G towers, took the children out of school, schooled them online. That's the virtual environment component. Took many of the adults off of work, let them work from home. That's the virtual environment component of it. Because again, it was about immersing people into the virtual world more evasively. So that's what it was about. All right. So we have to be clear. These things happen for a reason. It never was about a so-called virus. That was the front. Does that mean people aren't dying? No, it doesn't mean that. See, we have to be clear how government operates. And this is another problem. And this is why I talk about studying and researching so people are not ignorant. When you study and you research, you have the ability to understand how things work, to understand timelines, to understand pathologies and behaviors. Like you still have people in 2021 who doesn't think that this government is capable of doing the things that it does, even though you have Tuskegee, even though you have Congo, and you have other things that's taking place that's dealt with shots and things of that nature. So there's a history. So we know that pathology exists. We know psychopaths exist. We know we're dealing with psychopaths. We know that the behaviors and pathologies of psychopaths is going to be an extension of the psychopath. There's no way to get around that. They cannot be healed. It is what it is. They cannot be rehabilitated, transformed. We know that. That's science, and we're clear about that. So the same things are happening. People are being lied to, and I don't want to go off on a tangent, but it's all relatable, and that's why I want people to understand what's happening. So now all of a sudden, it's this metaverse and this huge immersing into this virtual world or this metaverse that people are talking about, but people don't understand or understand what's happening right here in the so-called real world because they can't see through the illusions. And the ignorance is a purveyor. The fear-based programming, media manipulation. People still think the media is telling them the truth. All right? I know how fear-based programming works. I know how psychological programming works. I know how media manipulation works. I know how these things work. I know the power of fear and what it does to people. I know the power of trauma and what it does to people when that's tapped into. Now, what do people think is going to be going on in the metaverse? Whatever's going on here outside the metaverse in so-called reality is going to go on in the metaverse, and it's going to be 10 times worse. And I don't want people, this is not fear. I understand the technology. I understand what's happening. My research is decades. So I'm very clear exponentially of how this works, what the pathologies are. I'm not even going to get into the psychosexual side of it because people couldn't stomach it in regards to what's going to be going on in the metaverse. But what you see out here, you're really going to see it in there. All right. And that's what I want people to understand. So don't think for a second that in this metaverse, you're not going to see, quote unquote, racism, poverty, murder, theft, sex, war, trauma, concerts, holograms, counterintelligence, agents, programming, real estate, digital identities, like all these different things, criminalization, thoughts, ideas, stocks, all of these different things you're going to see in the metaverse. You haven't mastered what's happening out here yet. How you going to master the metaverse? See, we really got to look at these things from a much deeper level and perspective. Money has never freed us, and it never will. Let me be clear. Money has never freed us, and it never will, period. Does that mean don't deal with economic parts of the metaverse if it can assist you? No, that's not what I'm saying. Am I saying don't do Bitcoin? No, that's not what I'm saying. Am I saying don't do cryptocurrency? No, that's not what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is make sure that you have an expanded view and you understand what's going on. Digital identity. Who's going to control your digital identity? Who's going to own it? Because you don't own it out here. So who's going to own your digital identity? Now, if you're dealing with all these other types of things in the metaverse, it's going to be based off of your digital identity. The issue is the fear programming that you're going to get left behind if you're not involved in these things. See, that's the fear. That's the programming. So now what happens? The majority of the world is repeating that programming. Well, you're going to get left behind. see what I'm saying? So it's always these traps. But the bottom line is, and this is why I opened up saying, you are the archetype. You are organic. You are the power. None of that exists without you. So why is it so important to immerse your imagination? Because that's really what they're immersing, your imagination into the metaverse. Because if you're focused in the metaverse the majority of your time, then what is it that you're actually creating and manifesting in the quote-unquote real world? See, people are going to have to make this make sense. Your imagination has always been under attack because that's how you're going to get free. That's your creative force. That's your force of manifestation. It all starts in the mind first. It's going to start with thought. It's going to start with intention. It's going to start with those things. So that's where the attack is. That's why the attack is on your neurological self and your subconscious mind. Things that work pathologically and behaviorally. They control those things. They control you. That's why so many people on the planet today, especially in the U.S., are just walking robots. That's why. You can give people the knowledge, the wisdom, the truth, and cognitive dissonance won't allow them to accept it or even go to study it. Why? Because they're programmed. And then they'll deify the very people that are victimizing them. Stockholm Syndrome. We see this every day. That's why we see the contradictions. And it's that ignorance that kills people.
Well, folks, there you have it. Everything all in a nutshell. Let's give thanks to our man, Brother Sadiki, for breaking it down, patching it, and summing it up for us. And hopefully you have more of an understanding of what is the metaverse or the meta matrix. I'm your host, Vessel 1 and Vessel 2 signing out. But before we go, as always, Vessel 2, give us your final thought.
Thank you, Vessel 1. We like to give a shout out and show appreciation to everybody who's watching the videos, leaving the comments, keep them coming. Reach out to us via email. We'll get back to you as soon as possible. New year, winter season, supposed to be a dark winter, according to President Biden. So with that said, please stand on your square, think for yourself, take care of the ones who you consider to be loved ones. Peace.
Peace.